Hello everyone, it's me Arden Lee, and in this video I'm going to be talking about how can we encourage our bodies to listen a little bit more to our brains when we're in the middle of experiencing a trigger from the trauma in our past, right? We can have experiences where we're just going about our day and something comes up, or we feel a feeling in our bodies that reminds us, even on an unconscious level, of something within our past, and we can experience a trauma reaction where essentially our bodies make no differentiation between the trauma that happened in the past and the feelings that our bodies are experiencing in the present moment. And we are certainly called, we are invited to use our mindfulness to bring conscious awareness to the moments when these happen so that we can go into self-soothing and being able, as the person who asked this question phrased it, right? Encouraging our bodies to listen to a little bit more to our minds, because our minds are better able to know whether there is a threat in the present or not. So I'm grateful for the person who asked this question so that we can do a bit of a dive on it today. This is a question from one of the members of the Repatterning Parlor, which, by the way, if you're not yet a member, it is the group that I moderate on Facebook. And you can find the link by going ahead and looking in the description box to this video. And you can come on over and join us and make a couple new friends, find support from like-minded individuals who are also working on reestablishing their patterns in ways that are healthier for them. And you can also make some topic requests for these videos as well. So come over and join us and say hello. And yeah, I would love to meet those of you who are watching these videos. So let me talk now about this ongoing dialogue between us and our bodies. And I specifically want to emphasize that it is an ongoing dialogue and these things take time. And that if we are experiencing a trauma reaction in the present moment, that it's important not to beat ourselves up for the fact that our minds may know what's going on and our bodies may still be having a reaction. We do, of course, want to give ourselves the opportunity to mitigate these responses and even allow ourselves for the possibility that there may be a time in our lives when we can eradicate these responses entirely, right? We don't want to pressure ourselves to get there, but we also don't want to sentence ourselves to living a lifetime with these responses either. So even if it's a matter of diminishing and mitigating these trauma reactions over time, I want to be able to give us the path toward that hope, right? Toward that kind of outcome. And the first thing that's important to establish about that is that for those of us, especially, who have a lot of trauma, the relationship between our minds and our bodies is often something that needs to be cultivated in our healing process so that we establish more self-trust. What do I mean by that? A lot of us who have experienced trauma in the past, what happens is our bodies will have these alarm bells go off, right? Like, oh no, this isn't safe, right? Something bad is happening. But if we can't escape that situation, and this is especially true of childhood trauma, though it's true of much adult trauma as well, if we can't escape that situation, then those emotions have nowhere to go to be processed. And essentially, that energy becomes stuck and stored in the body, right? Alarm bells are going off. And if we are in constant fear of our trauma happening to us again, we can be in what is known as a state of hyperarousal, right? We've talked about some of this in some of the other videos, so you may be familiar with this. But hyperarousal is essentially when all the alarm bells in our systems are going off all the time, right? It's like the fire alarm in my building, which is super sensitive. And nowadays it goes off and I don't even listen to it anymore because it's always lying, right? I hope I never have an actual fire, obviously. But that's the danger of living in hyperarousal, is that we'll be upset, right? Or we'll be feeling these very tangible emotions of anxiety, of panic and fear. And what will be happening is that we'll accustom ourselves to them, right? And when that happens, then the dialogue between our conscious awareness and our bodies gets cut off, because our bodies are like, yo, I'm ringing these alarm bells all the time and you're not listening to me, right? And I'm not listening because I'm like, the alarm bells go off in my building all the time. I'm pretty sure there's not an actual fire. And that that exact thing led to my not seeing a lot of red flags in relationships, right? Because my body had been telling me things, or trying to tell me things, since I was very young. But since I wasn't able to get myself out of abusive situations when I was a child, because I had no legal rights as a human being, then my body got accustomed to like, yo, I'm trying to show you that there's danger here. And I wasn't listening, right? So, or I was listening rather, but I was very much listening. But since I was unable to free myself from that situation, I developed a pattern of like, well, when this comes up, nothing I can do about it. Oh, well, I guess I'll just sit here and dissociate, right? So then what happens to me in my adulthood? Same thing. The other polarity of hyperarousal is desensitization. And these two can be quite linked. They can be hybridized even, right? Desensitization is when our bodies have had these alarm bells going off for so long that we're finally just sick of it, right? We're finally just like, I'm just shutting my body off. I can't live with all these alarm bells going off in my system. It's like I go and I just like destroy my fire alarm, right? I'm like, since these alarm bells are going off all the time and I can't live like this, I can't sustain this state, I'm just going to be in this feeling of numbness. That was my polarity for a long time. I was desensitized because my alarm bells had been going off for so long, and there was nothing I could do to remove myself from the circumstances. So my body's like, all right, bro, we're giving up. We're not talking to you anymore. So this is why I want to say that when we're having a trauma reaction and we're all of a sudden invited to start listening to our bodies in a much better and more in a more consciously cultivated manner that allows us to develop more trust between our conscious awareness and what's happening in our body. This is why I say it's an ongoing dialogue. And this is why it's important that when we are having a trauma reaction, that we don't beat ourselves up for not immediately catching it or not immediately being able to convince ourselves out of it, right? Now, there is a point about bringing conscious awareness to our trauma responses and practicing this awareness as a means of mitigating the response. So what does that look like? That looks like, over time, I become better at noticing when I'm having feelings that feel like a trauma response. I could be having anxiety. I could be feeling anger. I could be feeling fear. I could be feeling panic, right? And what I like to ask myself at that point is I like to ask, is this a trigger or is it a crisis? A trigger is when, for example, someone annoys me on the internet by having a belief, stating a belief that essentially, endangers me as a human, right? Like, hey, I don't know. Someone could be like, I think women are bitches and belong in the kitchen, right? And that could like piss me off for the rest of the day because I'm like, how can you think that? How can you like? And now this is bringing up, for me, like for example, like maybe my history of domestic violence, right? Or all of the incidents of harm that I have experienced through the hands of men who had those beliefs too, right? Of course, it's not a crisis because, first of all, I'm not in a relationship with that person on the internet. They're nowhere near me. And while I don't want to downplay the harms, specifically, especially of cyberbullying, and I do want to say that I have been, the recipient of some pretty credible threats on the internet too. So that I would also say is like, that's a crisis. That's not just a trigger, right? But the difference here is in asking, is something a trigger? Is it a crisis? Basically it says, is this something that I have to deal with in the external world, right? Like when I got audited by the IRS, that was a crisis, right? I literally owe money to the government. I have to do something about this. So the feelings of fear and panic and anger that I'm having at the government, at my shady accountant who, I thought I could trust or whatever, at that time, that was a crisis. That was something I had to deal with. A trigger, when I look at it and I say, is this anything that I have to deal with? If there was just some random dude on the internet who is just saying like, well, I think women are bitches and belong in the kitchen, I don't have to deal with that dude. I can, especially if he's not, threatening me directly, right? If it is a direct threat, then that might actually be a crisis. I don't want to minimize or downplay that. But let's just say I've encountered something where there's no credible threat to my being, right? Someone's just on the internet spouting off some bullshit because they're being dumb or whatever. All I really have to do in that situation is just block that person, right? Or walk away from that situation and self-soothe. I need to calm my body, right? So let's talk for a moment about self-soothing. Once I have discerned that I'm having a trigger and that it's not a crisis that needs to be dealt with in the immediate, in the present, then what I need to do is let my body know that I've heard her and start to work on self-soothing. And I want to bring attention to the phrasing of this question, which was, how do we get our bodies to listen to our brains better? I'd love to reverse this. I'd love to invite us to reverse this. How do we get our brains to listen to our bodies? And make choices in the moment that honor where our bodies are at. I really want to give us, I really want us to give our bodies credit for speaking to us, because when we are in trauma responses of hyperarousal or desensitization, the dialogue that we have between us and our bodies gets compromised. So even though this is a very subtle difference, I just want to point that out. If we're coming at it and being like, come on body, what the fuck are you doing? Like, listen to my brain. There's nothing that's wrong. There's nothing that we're in immediate danger about just because this dude has some shitty beliefs that he's spouting on the internet, right? But I really want us to be able to thank our bodies for letting us know, and to be able to use our awareness to make choices to soothe our bodies instead of saying, hey body, cut it out. How can we use our brains instead to say, what does my body need right now? Maybe the truth is I have been through some shit in my life, and right now something came up that's causing me to grieve some of that, right? I had a trigger happening for me 2 days ago, and I knew it. And sure enough, it was something dumb that someone had said on the internet, and it brought up a lot of anger in me. And I could feel it with me through the majority of the day. And then I watched the debate, which is probably, in retrospect, maybe not like the best idea, because that also was something that was activating. Because that also reminded me that I was like, well, I'm already triggered by something ignorant that someone is saying, which reminds me that the world is not as safe a place as I would like it to be, right? Even if I'm not in immediate danger, just the fact that that's happening is what's happening. And then on top of it, I watched the debate, and I'm watching all these, these people yelling at each other, and I'm like feeling feelings when the candidates I like are like arguing for a safer, country for all of us. And I'm feeling feelings when other people are attacking those candidates, and I just was like, this is the way I'm feeling today. And what do I do to take care of my body? So I went to my Bhagwajan class, I went to my my internal martial arts class that I've been taking since the start of the year. And I went there knowing that I wasn't going to enjoy being in my body. And I went there, but I was like, what am I going to do? Am I going to avoid it and I'm going to stay home on my couch and just dissociate? No, that's not who I want to be. I'm going to go to this class. I'm going to understand that it's going to be kind of painful for me to be in my body today because I don't want to feel my body because my body feels sad. I'm feeling emotions. I'm feeling emotions about what happened today. I'm feeling emotions about the state of our country and whatever. But I made a commitment to myself, and I know that getting in my body and owning my emotions and feeling them and releasing them is the way forward, right? So I did that. And then I'm also just asking my body, like, what do you want? What do you want in terms of food right now? Like, what do you want? You know, I'm not going to let it like run the show and like be like, I want 10 pints of Ben and Jerry's ice cream or whatever, because that's letting my body just run the pattern, right? But I'm going to be like, what is going to make you feel good right now? What do I need to do to take care of you? And the more we create that dialogue between ourselves and our bodies, the more our bodies are going to let us know what is going to feel good and the ways that we want to self-soothe. And the more our bodies are going to trust that when they have those reactions, that we're going to take care of them and that things aren't as bad as they thought they would be, right? So I have a trigger come up for me now, and it's like, all right, I know I have a trigger, but my body is letting me know that we have some feelings about some things, and my body trusts that I'm also going to take care of it. In the past, when I was in my trauma loops, when I was a child experiencing abuse in my childhood, and then later as an adult when I was experiencing abuse in my relationships that I was unable to get out of because I couldn't see beyond my patterning because it was what I was used to, my body would interpret these things as really bad. This would be like, oh my God, this is such a crisis, and I'm going to feel bad, I'm going to feel bad, I'm going to feel bad, I'm going to feel bad. Because why? Because you're not listening to me. Once we develop that dialogue with our bodies and we can say, I hear you, and I'm going to go home tonight and I'm going to take care of you, or I'm going to take care of you as quickly as I can, right? Then our bodies are going to chill out a little bit more and listen to our brains, right? As originally asked. I'm going to be like, okay, this sucks. I'm feeling the emotion right now, but we're going to be all right overall. And I want to emphasize that this is an ongoing dialogue. This is not something that we can beat ourselves up for in the moment for not being perfect at yet. It's a friendship. It's a friendship between ourselves and our bodies. And in order for our bodies to trust in the fact that we're listening, we need to display that fact that we're listening and that we're taking care. So let's talk just for the last couple minutes of this video just about self-soothing techniques, right? Listening to our bodies and asking our bodies what we need can be that's essentially what I jump to right away, right? I'm like, all right, if this is the way that I'm feeling, what's going to help me feel better? Do I want time with a friend? Do I want to process something? Do I need someone to speak to? Do I want to stay home and have some cannabis? Like, that's a good question, right? Because I'm like, and it also depends on the strain, because sometimes I'm like, I feel bad. If I have cannabis, I might get too paranoid about something, right? or I'll be like, no, I feel trust in the ability of cannabis to feel soothing at this point, right? So asking your body what it wants, creating that dialogue, and knowing what you can do to take care of it and prioritizing taking care of it is something that's really going to help a great deal. Also, anything that soothes your parasympathetic nervous system, right? Anything that soothes your sympathetic nervous system, by which I mean activates your parasympathetic nervous system. So this is things like deep breaths, right? Grounding techniques. There's a technique that is remaining still, sitting in one place, and naming 5 things that you can see in the room, 5 noises you can hear. It gets hard after a while to name a lot of them, but that's kind of the point. And 5 things that you feel, right? Like maybe like the couch against my arm, or the air against my skin, or whatever that is. 5, 5, and 5. You do a round of that, and then you do it again. You do 4, 4, and 4, a round of 3, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, etc. And that helps to concentrate your body on what you're feeling in the present moment, so that you can ground into the present moment and remind your body that the past that you're feeling triggered by is not happening, right? It's like, all right, I have some emotions, but I'm here. I'm in my living room. Everything is going to be okay, right? I do 5, 5, and 5 if I need to ground. I activate deep breaths if I need to soothe my nervous system, right? Deep breaths will activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which will soothe anxiety. So all of these things being things that we can do to take care of our bodies in the moment. But I do want to emphasize that going forward, it is a relationship. It is an ongoing dialogue. And the better we strengthen this cord between our conscious awareness and our bodies, the easier it's going to be for us to communicate in the future, and the more resiliency we're going to have in terms of coming back from those PTSD flashbacks or from those trauma reactions. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope that shed some light on the topic and how all of that works. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.